Have you ever found yourself feeling trapped in a relationship that you don't want, where you're pretending to be happy just to avoid confronting the uncomfortable truth? Maybe you're staying because you're afraid of what others might think, or because you've been led to believe that being in a relationship is the only way to find fulfillment. But what if I told you that the idea of love as we know it today is a social construct, a cage designed to keep us locked into expectations that don't serve our true happiness? Imagine if the love we're taught to pursue, this idea of eternal romance, wasn't a path to freedom, but a road that limits us from experiencing life as we truly deserve. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the reality that might just make you rethink everything you've been taught about love, relationships, and even your happiness. This may challenge everything you thought you knew about what it means to truly connect with someone and to live a fulfilling life. Stick around because, by the end of this video, you'll understand why society's narrow view of relationships is often a lie. You'll see how this deception is preventing you from stepping into a life of true freedom, self-respect, and personal fulfillment. You'll learn why being single is not a failure, but a powerful choice that gives you the freedom to live life on your terms. You'll also discover how many people unknowingly suffocate themselves in relationships that don't support their well-being. These false beliefs that society pushes on us can keep us from living authentically. Breaking free from them is the first step toward creating a life that's truly fulfilling, full of genuine connection and self-discovery. So if you've ever questioned what love truly means or felt burdened by the pressure of society's expectations about your happiness, this video will open your eyes in a way you never expected. Let's dive in. The world around us is filled with individuals quietly trapped in relationships they don't truly desire, tethered to a life of pretense. They wear their smiles like masks, pretending to be happy when, in reality, their hearts are heavy with the burden of dissatisfaction. Why? Because admitting that they'd be better off alone would somehow be seen as a public failure, a reflection of inadequacy. It's a sad truth, isn't it? So many of us continue down this path, clinging to relationships simply because that's what society expects of us, as if following the same old script guarantees happiness. But, my friends, that couldn't be further from the truth. Relationships are often formed out of habit, inertia, or a sense of duty, not out of genuine desire or deep emotional connection. And yet, society celebrates this emotional tragedy, perpetuating the idea that love, as it's been sold to us, is the ultimate achievement, the pinnacle of human existence. In reality, what we've been conditioned to call love is nothing more than a gilded cage. It's shiny and alluring on the outside, but inside, it restricts us, limits our freedom, and traps us in a life of suffocation. The moment that fiery passion we initially felt begins to cool, all that's left is the smoke of exhaustion, the remnants of a once promising flame that has now devolved into a mundane, monotonous existence disguised as commitment. And why do we keep doing this to ourselves? Is it to avoid being alone? Is that the price we're willing to pay, to stay in a relationship simply to avoid facing the uncomfortable truth that we are alone in this world? But here's the kicker. You can be alone and still be perfectly content. The loneliness we fear isn't about solitude. It's about confronting the harsh reality that we don't need someone else to validate our worth. The sad part is that it all begins with seduction. But over time, what was once an exciting dance of passion and curiosity has devolved into a meaningless pantomime, a mindless parade of egos, each person desperately seeking attention, approval, and validation. It's almost laughable, watching people strut and preen like peacocks, hoping someone will notice their feathers and bestow favor upon them. Instead of nurturing a real connection, we've turned the search for love into a social game, where the winner is the one who can lie the best, perform the most charming act, and curate the most perfect image for the world to see. And we dare to call that romance. It's no wonder most relationships are founded on these pretty little lies, these facades that are designed to gain approval rather than nurture genuine affection. We present ourselves as versions of perfection, putting on a show to make sure we're liked from the very first moment. And when it all inevitably crumbles, we act surprised. What did you think would happen? A house built on lies and shaky foundations will eventually collapse. And here's the thing, We've all participated in this illusion willingly. We've all been complicit in this societal farce. And let me be blunt, if you think love is going to fix everything down the line, I'm afraid I have some bad news for you. Love doesn't fix anything. It only complicates things. Romantic love, as we understand it, is merely a socially acceptable form of possession. We've been conditioned to believe that love means needing someone else, that without another person, we can't possibly be happy. But here's a thought: if you need someone else to feel whole, to feel fulfilled, then you've already lost. The problem isn't being alone. The problem is staying with someone who, in the end, makes you feel lonelier than you would be on your own. And that's the true tragedy, because in that process, we lose pieces of ourselves, bits of our own identity, all for the sake of maintaining a relationship that no longer serves us. Society relentlessly pushes this idea that we'll find happiness and completeness when we meet our soulmate. What a degrading and disempowering concept. As though we entered this world broken, incomplete, and in need of someone else to make us whole. I'd rather remain single than chase after that illusion. It's laughable to think that the true purpose of life is to find another person to validate your existence. Yet, society pushes us toward relationships with the same urgency it pushes us toward buying life insurance. If you don't have a partner, there's something wrong with you. You're labeled strange and incomplete, as though your worth is measured by your relationship status. But here's the real absurdity. It's not being alone that's the problem. The real issue is seeking companionship because you're terrified of what others will think. Love has ceased to be a genuine choice. It's now an artificial need, something we feel we must have to prove our worth in the eyes of society. We no longer love because we genuinely want to. We love because we've been told we must. And that's not love. It's a prison, a cage of expectations, a contract we sign with fear rather than desire. True love doesn't come from the fear of being alone. It comes from the freedom of being at peace with yourself, of being whole without needing anyone else to complete you. The reason so many of us stay shackled in relationships that don't serve us is the overwhelming terror of loneliness. But the irony is unmistakable. Most couples are far lonelier within their relationships than they would be on their own. They are emotionally isolated, trapped in a life that feels more like a prison than a partnership. Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "If you feel lonely when you're with yourself, you're in bad company." That quote sums up the essence of this entire deception. Couples don't come together because they truly desire one another. They come together because they can't stand the idea of being alone. The relationship becomes a contract of emotional dependency, where control, surveillance, and suspicion take the place of affection and mutual respect. When you're checking your partner's every move, when you feel the need to monitor their every action, that's not love, that's an emotional prison. And infidelity, or the constant fear of it, becomes the dark shadow that haunts every relationship. But can we blame them? Society is broken, and fidelity has gone from being a norm to becoming a rare and precious exception. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The truth is, we need to stop pretending. Stop pretending that love is some magical cure-all. Stop pretending that a relationship will save you from yourself. Only by embracing the uncomfortable truth of who we are and finding peace within ourselves can we ever hope to build a real, lasting connection with others. Only then can we break free from the chains that keep us trapped in relationships that serve only to numb us, not to set us free. We spend countless days, weeks, and years consumed by the overwhelming need to check our phones, glancing nervously over our shoulders, living under a cloud of constant suspicion and fear that our partner might betray us. This kind of life is emotionally draining. It's like being in a never-ending state of alertness, perpetually questioning whether your partner is truly loyal, constantly worried that they might wander or find someone new. And in truth, what kind of relationship is built on fear? What does it say about us when we are so terrified of losing someone that we feel compelled to monitor their every move? To fear that, at any moment, the person we love might slip away? It's exhausting, emotionally draining, and ultimately, it feels suffocating. If you find yourself regularly checking your partner's phone, it's clear, whether you want to admit it or not, that the foundation of the relationship has already cracked. The trust is gone, it's just that no one wants to face the truth, to say the words out loud. And here's the heartbreaking truth. Even if your partner isn't cheating, you are still left trapped in that cloud of suspicion, overwhelmed by insecurity. Especially if they are attractive or active on social media. The problem isn't just about infidelity. The problem is that, in relationships like this, the fear of infidelity becomes an inevitable shadow that hangs over everything. We live in a world now where temptation is everywhere, a commodity that is always within arm's reach. Technology, with all its conveniences, has made cheating easier, faster, and almost effortless. It's as if we're all constantly swimming in a sea of opportunities that can drown us if we're not careful. But despite all this, we continue to hold on to this outdated, almost medieval ideal of eternal loyalty. It's like we're trapped in a time loop, pretending that monogamy, in the way we understand it, is the ultimate goal of our relationships. But let's face it, in a world where cheating is so prevalent, and where so many of us have been hurt by it, why do we still cling to the belief in this myth of absolute fidelity? The truth is that love based on control, constant surveillance, and insecurity is nothing more than a farce. And fidelity, when it's imposed out of obligation and fear, becomes a prison. It's a form of mental and emotional torture that no one should ever have to endure. Love, sex, and desire, the very things that should be sources of joy, are twisted into something painful and suffocating, simply because we're terrified of breaking some outdated, arbitrary agreement. But I ask you, what kind of life is that? Is that really what we want for ourselves, as we grow older, as we try to build something meaningful? Nature, in all its wisdom, has already given us the answer. Look at the animals. They don't bind themselves to just one partner for life. And when they do, they still interact with others of their kind. They live with freedom, joy, and connection, without the crushing fear that simply being themselves could destroy them. Only humans have decided that sex must come with chains, that it must be tied to a commitment, a duty, and a contract. We've built this bizarre notion that sex is an obligation, something we must force ourselves to engage in, even when we're not feeling it. And we call this commitment. I believe it's time we change the conversation. Sex should be free. It should flow naturally, like eating or drinking, something as essential as any other basic human need. No guilt, no shame, no imposition of society's outdated rules. Why should we believe that joy and intimacy should be restricted? Why is it that we are taught to suppress our desires, to lock them away, to suffocate them under the weight of societal expectations? Who says you can't enjoy sex when you want to? Why should pleasure only be reserved for those within a committed, long-term relationship? Why do we continue to place restrictions on ourselves when nature itself doesn't demand it? Casual relationships, when both parties agree and mutual respect is maintained, can simply be part of our natural experience. Yet, as soon as we enjoy pleasure without strings, society condemns us. If you're a man, you get called a man-whore. And if you're a woman, the judgment is even harsher, more degrading. But isn't it more immoral to live in a state of denial, pretending to be pure, while secretly fantasizing about betraying the person you're supposedly committed to? Isn't the real betrayal the one we perform on ourselves, every time we suppress what we genuinely desire out of fear of being judged? So I ask again, what's truly stopping you from living the life you want? Is it the same societal norms that people claim to uphold, yet secretly don't follow themselves? It's all hypocrisy. We live in a world where people preach about fidelity, about loyalty, but behind closed doors, they fantasize about the first attractive person they see. The truth is simple. We live in a society that punishes those who embrace sexual freedom, yet secretly envies their ability to live authentically. The ones who preach monogamy the loudest are often the ones most consumed by their repressed desires. They are the ones who, despite feeling the weight of their yearnings, refuse to step out of their cage. But the truth is clear: forced monogamy doesn't breed love, it breeds tension. It doesn't bring connection, it creates distance. Desire, the same basic drive that makes us human, cannot be contained. The more we try to suppress it, the more it comes back to haunt us, often in ways that harm not just ourselves, but our relationships too. I've said this before, and I'll say it again: repression causes harm, both to the body and the soul. It wears you down, makes you sick, and leaves you unable to truly experience the world as it is meant to be. It's time we stop pretending that forced loyalty and suffocating norms will lead us to happiness. It's time we acknowledge that true freedom and true love come when we allow ourselves to experience life in all its fullness. Without guilt, without shame, without restrictions, and without fear. If you choose to share your life with someone, make sure it's because your hearts and minds align in ways that are meaningful and genuine, not because you've convinced yourself that you need someone else to complete you. Life is too precious to sacrifice your true self, your dreams, your peace, your well-being, just to conform to someone else's expectations or ideals. In my opinion, love isn't about clinging to another person out of fear of being alone, or to fit some societal blueprint. When we let go of our own identities in favor of a relationship, we lose ourselves. The harsh truth is that love fades when the things that initially drew you together, those shared interests, passions, and dreams, start to unravel. When the excitement of new love fades and there's nothing but the hollow echoes of what once was, the connection may fall apart. The issue isn't about having a partner. It's about the deeply ingrained belief that marriage or a lifelong commitment is a universal rule that must be followed, no matter the cost. We've been taught that this is the standard, that this is what defines success in life, and that everyone must fall in line. But let me tell you, this belief is a breeding ground for dissatisfaction, disappointment, and heartache. It's deeply unsettling to realize that so many still hold onto the illusion that blindly following these social norms guarantees emotional fulfillment. But does it? Many of these same people hold onto a naive belief that the government, society, or external forces can somehow ensure their happiness and protect their rights. But the truth is, freedom only comes when we stop playing the relationship game out of some misplaced sense of duty. We are so often conditioned to believe that love should look a certain way, and if you veer off that path, you're considered flawed or misguided. If reading this makes you uncomfortable, maybe it's because on some level, you know I'm telling you the truth. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's necessary. They tell us that fidelity is the ultimate proof of love, but what they don't tell you is that this loyalty is often driven by fear. Fear of losing the other person. Fear of not being enough. Fear that they'll turn to someone else because you're not giving them something they need. But that's not love, is it? That's insecurity masquerading as commitment. How can we truly call it love when it's rooted in control, suspicion, and endless surveillance? We get caught up in the idea of love that's so tainted with insecurity that we don't even recognize how unhealthy it's become. We spend hours obsessing over our partner's phone, reading into every pause, overanalyzing every word, and trying to decode their actions. And it's exhausting. We manipulate, we play passive-aggressive games, all in the name of love, because we're trying to keep control. And when that mistrust takes hold, the relationship's heart dies, replaced by routine and suffocating habits. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Love should never be an exclusivity contract. It shouldn't feel like a prison sentence, where every step, every word, every action feels bound by invisible chains. It should feel free, grounded in mutual respect, where both individuals understand that their freedom is not a threat, but an essential part of what makes a relationship flourish. When you realize that true joy comes from freedom, not control, everything shifts. The idea of desire becomes something to embrace, not something to fear or suppress. And that shift, that's when real love blooms. But it's not something that fits neatly into the script we've been taught by society. Society is terrified of losing their partner, and so they build walls, thinking that control is the key to loyalty. But all that does is breed resentment, creating a slow, steady erosion of what could have been beautiful. The constant craving for validation, love, and affection from a partner is like a currency that loses its value over time. When the initial excitement wears off and desire reawakens, it's often ignored or hidden away, which only leads to dishonesty and deceit. What could have been an open, trusting relationship becomes a series of lies, both told and untold. Real love doesn't need to be locked away behind bars or chains. If you need to keep someone imprisoned in a relationship to stop them from leaving, then you've already lost them. It's like keeping a bird in a cage. It will never return to a cage that's been locked, only to the open sky. If love is real, it should feel freeing, not confining. Love that's based on trust, respect, and understanding doesn't need to be controlled or contained. And once you realize that, you understand that you deserve a love that allows both of you to fly freely together without fear. The true danger, I believe, lies not in being alone, but in the deep, unspoken power of freedom that comes with not needing anyone else to define your worth, your happiness, or your sense of purpose. Our society, for all its advancements, has embedded in us a singular belief that to be alone is a flaw, a mistake, something that must be corrected at all costs. It's as if living without a partner is not just a personal choice, but a tragedy, a kind of unfinished story that must be rewritten. The pressure is insidious. It's in the words of well-meaning friends who say, "You'll find someone, don't worry," as though being single is a temporary state, a waiting room before you can move on to the real thing, a life shared with someone else. But here's the truth. Being single is not an accident. It's not a mistake to be fixed. Being single is a conscious decision, a brave, deliberate choice made by those who value freedom and self-discovery more than the conventional script that society insists we follow. And let me tell you, it takes real courage to make that choice, especially in a world that often makes you feel like an outsider for doing so. Ironically, and heartbreakingly, those who are quick to criticize the single life are often the very same people who find themselves in relationships they no longer desire, relationships that have become a burden, a set of obligations they are too afraid to escape from. They stay because they fear the unknown and the vulnerability that comes with being alone. They cling to their relationships out of habit, out of fear of being judged, or out of some false notion that a partnership will somehow complete them. It's as if they are too afraid to face the blank space of their own lives, so they keep these relationships alive, dragging them along like a corpse they're too afraid to bury. They convince themselves they need a partner to feel validated, but in reality, they're trapped in a web of unspoken resentment, unmet needs, and quiet despair. Here's the raw truth, though. Life as a couple shouldn't be the default. It should be the exception. We've been conditioned to believe that finding a partner is the ultimate goal, the end-all be-all of happiness. But why? Our natural state as human beings should be freedom. Freedom to make our own choices, freedom to live life on our terms, without the heavy emotional entanglements that often restrict us. The idea that we must be in a relationship to feel complete is one of the greatest myths we've been fed, and it's high time we question it. Because let's face it, being in a relationship doesn't always equal happiness. For many, it means trading freedom for stability, but often at the cost of their own peace and personal growth. The chains of obligation, emotional baggage, and the weight of unrealistic expectations are not worth the supposed security that comes with them. I often think about the animals we share this planet with. Creatures who, despite living in social structures, still manage to live freely on their terms. Wolves, for example, may hunt in packs, but they sleep alone. They gather for survival, but when it comes time to rest, they embrace solitude. Lions live in social groups, but their relationships are fleeting. Mates come and go, with no long-term emotional contracts binding them. And yet, they thrive. These animals teach us something that humans have long forgotten. The freedom to live alone, without emotional entanglements, is natural. Only humans, in all our complexity, have created this strange, convoluted, and sometimes suffocating construct we call love. A construct that insists we must bind ourselves to others to feel whole, to feel safe. And I think that's where we've gone wrong. Emma Goldman once said, "The worst slavery is the one where the slave loves their chains." And that's precisely how we live, loving our relationships because they provide a sense of security, even though deep down, we know that this sense of security is a lie. It's a false comfort, the most comfortable prison ever constructed, and we willingly lock ourselves in. The idea of the couple, as we've come to define it in society, is like a net. It promises us stability, protection, and safety, but in reality, it often ensnares us in a web of emotional instability, dependency, and unmet needs. It's a trap that we willingly walk into, thinking we're doing the right thing, thinking we're living life the way it's supposed to be lived. But here's where it gets absurd. How is it that being single is treated as a problem, as if it's something that needs to be fixed, especially for women? Women, in particular, are told to find a man, to settle down, before their time runs out, as if the value of their entire existence hinges on their relationship status. The underlying message is loud and clear. You're not enough on your own. You need someone else to make you whole. And when someone dares to remain single for too long, the world looks on with pity, as if they've somehow failed at life. They're seen as unlucky, as though fate has turned its back on them. It's as if society has determined that unless you're partnered, you're incomplete, undeserving of true fulfillment. What others fail to see, though, is that the single person doesn't suffer in the way that society thinks they do. Far from it. The single person stands apart, watching with clarity as the world around them drowns in relationships that have long since expired, relationships that should have ended years ago, but continue to drag on out of fear, convenience, or societal pressure. It's strange, but I'll admit that sometimes I find a strange satisfaction in seeing those who criticize my lifestyle, the ones living unhappily in relationships that are nothing more than obligations, that are tethered to unspoken resentment. I see them, tangled in emotional messes, suffocated by unmet needs and unrealistic expectations. And I can't help but think, why would I want that for myself? If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The pressure society places on us to be in a relationship, to find a partner, doesn't come from a place of love. It comes from fear. It's the fear of what the single person represents. If one person can live happily and fulfilled without a partner, then what does that say about everyone else? The single person becomes living proof that love doesn't have to be an obligatory pact. It doesn't have to be a contractual arrangement that limits our freedom. And in a world that is obsessed with romantic ideals, that's a hard pill to swallow. The single person stands as a challenge to the norm, a challenge to the idea that love must come with certain conditions, and that happiness must always be shared with another. But here's what I've come to understand in my own life. There's something profoundly beautiful in embracing solitude. It's not a punishment. It's a gift. The freedom to explore who you are, what you want, and what truly brings you peace and joy, without having to answer to anyone else, is one of the greatest blessings of all. I've learned that my peace, my happiness, is worth more than any fleeting sense of security that a relationship could offer. It's not that I don't understand the longing for connection. It's that I've learned to find it within myself first. Until we fully accept that we are whole on our own, until we learn to embrace the beauty of solitude, we'll continue to be prisoners to the myth that love is the ultimate goal, the one thing that will make us feel complete. The truth is, being single is not a failure. It's a powerful, radical act of self-love. It's the choice to live freely, to choose yourself over societal expectations, and to create a life that is truly yours. And perhaps that's the greatest danger, the courage to be alone, to be free, to live without the suffocating chains that so many choose to wear in the name of love. It's a danger because it forces us to question everything we've been taught about relationships, worth, and happiness. It's a danger because it's the most liberating choice we can make. Being single isn't about a lack of love. On the contrary, It's a testament to an abundance of self-respect and self-awareness. It's about choosing yourself first, choosing your own space, your freedom, your peace of mind, without ever needing to compromise. It's the conscious decision to never trade your time, your energy, or your body for something transient, for a love that flickers out as quickly as it flared up. Being single is about rejecting the exhausting circus of seduction and possession, a game where everyone pretends to be indifferent, yet all the while fights for the other person's fleeting attention. It's a game so toxic, so mentally draining, and it leaves you questioning the validity of it all. It feels schizophrenic, paranoid even. But when you're single, you step out of that toxic play. You no longer have to pretend to be someone you're not just to fit into someone else's idea of love or affection. You don't have to prove your worth. You simply are. You exist, unapologetically and fully, without the need for validation or external approval. Oscar Wilde was right when he said, "To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance." The truth in those words resounds louder as we age and realize that so much of what we've been taught about relationships is an illusion. If being in a couple doesn't foster personal growth, then it isn't love. It's an anchor, a weight that keeps you tethered to someone else's version of happiness. Love should lift you, not hold you down. A relationship is supposed to be a complement to your life, not the glue that holds you together. And when you choose to embrace singleness, you're freeing yourself from those chains. You can have meaningful, deep connections with others without the chains of expectation, without emotional debts tying you to someone else. Casual relationships, when they are built on honesty and mutual respect, are not a threat to your freedom but rather an extension of it, giving you the space to connect authentically without pressure. Being single, at its core, is an act of radical honesty, of complete self-awareness. It's a painful yet beautiful awakening, a decision to stop deceiving yourself with promises of something that may never be. It's understanding that you can love deeply without the need to possess, to enjoy the companionship of another without the obligation to own them or make endless promises. In singleness, you remain whole. You never lose yourself. You are not defined by the relationship you're in, but by your ability to stand strong, firm, and true in your light. Singleness isn't a temporary state. It's a destination, a place of peace and fulfillment. It's the end of a long road of searching for something outside yourself to feel complete. And it's a rare destination, a place where very few truly arrive, because most people get lost in relationships that, deep down, they knew they never should have entered. Those relationships that were meant to bring them joy instead brought confusion, suffocation, and loss. Being single isn't about loneliness. It's about clarity, independence, and the quiet joy of existing on your terms. It's about being free from the noise and chaos of the world's expectations. And in this space, we find the greatest love of all, the love that starts from within. As we wrap up today's video, I want you to take a moment and reflect on everything we've explored together. Being single isn't about lacking love. It's about embracing the most important love of all, the love you have for yourself. It's about choosing your freedom, your authenticity, and your inner peace over fleeting illusions and societal pressures. I hope that what we've discussed today has resonated with you and offered a new perspective on embracing singleness as a destination, not a phase. So, what have you learned from this? What resonates with you the most? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Please share one thing you've learned today that you will actively bring into your life moving forward. Let's continue this conversation. If you enjoyed this video and found value in the message, please leave your comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more insights and inspiration. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.